Which Soulsborne boss fight includes this sound effect? Is it A. Mogo's wet nurse, B. Ceaseless discharge, C. Gyobu Masataka Oniwa, or D. Osiris the Consumed King? Vote now. No, hey, don't look at the comments. Okay, is that your final answer? Alright. The answer is B. Ceaseless discharge. That is the same sound effect as this. It's just slowed down and given a lower pitch. Truth is, Ceaseless is an infant. He was tragically transformed in Izalith while the Chaos Flame was still unstable. The fact that his voice is just modified from that of an actual baby makes this sad story even sadder. Deep in the design works of Dark Souls lies another secret from this area. His name is King Izalith, and he was originally going to be the main boss of this area, sitting on a throne, lording it over the bed of chaos that was to writhe beneath him. This concept is very obviously inspired by the old monk of Demon Souls, who sits above his arena in much the same way, and in turn the old monk looks very much like Xanthous' king Jeremiah, who was a man exiled to the painted world. So it's almost certain that Jeremiah is, or at least was at one point, the king of Izalith. In addition to the old monk connection, there are two other things. First, he uses chaos pyromancies, which were developed by the witches of Izalith, and he especially uses Chaos Flame Whip, which was wielded by the eldest daughter alone. And second, remember that wall-hugging parasite in Blighttown that guards power within? In the text files of the game, this thing is called Prince Izalith, which really leaves little suspicion as to what kind of parasite the Xanthous King is hiding beneath his bloodied yellow headpiece. Another NPC that was originally intended to be a boss fight was Master Willem, who sits on the Bergenworth balcony overlooking Rom's Lake. In cut content, Willem proclaims this desperate need for more eyes, and then he decides that, hey, your eyes will do perfectly.
You are most welcome, my precious sacrifice. Now, over here, quick. Go on, give me your eyes. Yes, a pleasure to have you.
In his boss mode, Willem begins speaking in tongues, he summons projectiles, and he slams his chair down in this unnatural, creepy manner to damage the player with some sort of shockwave, which is unfortunately invisible alongside his projectiles in the current state of the game. This was originally discovered by Lance McDonald, who often features in this series, as you're probably aware, so for more on this encounter, go and check out his YouTube channel. Lance revealed another piece of cut content this year, and this time it's centered on the Yharnam Stone, which is kind of at once the toughest item to find in Bloodborne and also the most useless. But it wasn't always this way. You get this item from defeating Queen Yharnam in the deepest Chalice dungeons, and at one point, if you took it to the fishing hamlet priest, he had this to say.
Time is not, and the sea rumbles afar, and yet a mother's pungent devotion can still be felt. Oh, thank you, messenger. I exude gratitude for one such as you. Gods, bless this messenger, this visitor from beyond.
Apart from the fact that the priest blesses you in this dialogue, instead of cursing you for a change, there really is little of significance to learn from this, except that in this place, outside of time and outside of space, the devotion of another mother can still be felt. For it is the destiny of all of the Great Ones to lose their children, and just as Kos lost her orphan, so too did Queen Yharnam have Mogo taken from her. It's a shame, really, that this no longer exists in-game, because an accomplishment like killing Queen Yharnam really does deserve something, even if it's just this little line of dialogue. And as of November 18th, 2019, every single Chalice dungeon has been explored and documented, because counter to popular belief, the Chalice dungeons are actually finite, and not truly randomly generated. Instead, each depth of Chalice dungeon pulls from a hard-coded selection of rooms, with a total of 2,300 possible dungeons, each one of them additionally modified by effects and rites that make them look a bit different. So, thanks to the folks over at the Tomb Prospectors Reddit, we now have this exhaustive list of all the effects, gems, bosses, and discoveries inside of these places, all of which can be found in the description below. Congratulations on this monumental achievement. As we all know, Bloodborne is heavily based on the writings of H.P. Lovecraft and his cosmic horror of the unknown and the unknowable. The best example of this, commonly referenced, is the fishing hamlet and its similarities to Lovecraft's Shadows over Innsmouth story. However, in all the years since Bloodborne's release, I feel like I've never seen anyone discussing specifically how Lovecraft's other stories directly inspired different sections of Bloodborne. How the dream quest of unknown Kadath sees a man traversing sanctuaries and nightmares just like the Hunter's Dream and Nightmare realms. How a handful of stories feature cursed families who mirror the fate of Bloodborne's hunters. Or one of my favorites, how the expedition into the labyrinths in Mountains of Madness somewhat inspired the Chalice dungeons. Listen to this quote, which I'm free to read to you at length thanks to this video's sponsorship by Audible. Tell me this doesn't remind you of the Chalice dungeons. It is absolutely necessary for the peace and safety of mankind that some of the Earth's dark, dead corners and unplumbed depths be let alone, lest sleeping abnormalities wake to resurgent life, and blasphemously surviving nightmares squirm and splash out of their black lairs to newer and wider conquests. That's a quote from the Mountains of Madness, and there are so many stories like this. So, to help you listen to them all, I managed to get an Audible sponsorship for this video, with the link below or by texting VATIVideo to 500 For a limited time, you can get 3 months of Audible for just $6.95 a month, which is more than half off the regular price. And every month, you'll receive a free audiobook credit that you can cash in for anything in their enormous library of content. I've listened to Audible in my downtime for years now, and I really enjoy that feeling of growing my personal library bit by bit every month. So consider starting yours today by, again, visiting audible.com/VATIVideo or by texting VATIVideo to 500. The audiobook that I recommend is The Complete Fiction of H.P. Lovecraft because it has every story and it has a great narrator who convincingly voices a whole cast of characters. And if you don't like this choice for whatever reason, you can actually exchange it with no questions asked, and any audiobooks in their enormous library that you do decide to keep are yours forever. Speaking of enormous libraries, a surprising number of the books in Seath's archives actually have legible titles. Perhaps the most notable one is this one. It's a real book written by French author Paul Acker, titled Le Désir de Vivre, which translates to The Desire to Live. Pretty suitable title in a game like this. Number 8. No one really ever expects to be hit by that melancholy piano when you first go through the final boss fog in the kiln of the first flame. It's the climax of your journey, and yet you're facing this sad husk of a man to the tune of this simple piano piece. It's striking from a story standpoint, it's brave as a compositional choice, but also it might be impressive technically as well, for the name Gwyn means white, and his theme is best played entirely with all the white keys on a piano. It's likely that this took some conscious restraint on the part of the composer, and it could even be an effort at madrigalism, where they set the word Gwyn or white to music in a way that illustrates its literal meaning. Of course, it could be still coincidence, but I kind of think coincidence can still be meaningful, and I think this is one of those times, but maybe those with more musical knowledge can weigh in on this in the comments below. Gwyn's soul was split and given to a few in his entourage, most notably to Seath and also the Four Kings. However, there is one misleading statement in the English that has to do with his 4 knights, whose souls read, Gwyn granted this soul to his 4 trusted knights. And this actually isn't true. Instead, these souls are more accurately read, the soul of one that was counted among the 4 knights of King Gwyn, and it's unlikely that he granted them power in the same manner that he did to Seath and the 4 kings. In a recent episode on Senpo Temple, we told the story of how Kotaro ends up in the Illusory Halls, finally reunited with the rejuvenating children, a group of invisible kids sacrificed in experiments on immortality. And in this final scene, Kotaro is seen talking to them all, but you don't actually just have to take his word for it that they're there, they actually are. As terrible as it sounds, if you attack the space where they're sitting, you get that visual effect that shows whenever you try to kill a protected NPC, they're there, and you gotta love the extra thought that went into this. Speaking of killing NPCs, when you go to fight Hawkwood in the final battle, we're met with this entitled, arrogant character who is determined to kill us and take the dragon stone from our person. But in the Japanese, his dialogue gives a more gentle, heroic spin on the character. This is a character that we've seen shy away from his destiny throughout the ages, never standing up for himself, and in the end, instead of the English proclaiming that he shall take that which is rightfully his, in the Japanese he actually says something more like, he will receive recognition by defeating us, and when we defeat him, he calmly states, well, if you are the dragon, then that isn't so bad. Another character that's deeper than most know is Griggs, who really may not be who he says he is. The black sorcerer set that he wears states that there is a secret sect of sorcerers at Vinheim Academy, dedicated to covert operations, and while Griggs maintains this guise of a humble apprentice to Master Logan, there really is a lot of deception built into his character. First, Griggs has a selection of spells that you can learn from, but the only spell that he's not willing to teach to you is a spell called Hush, which is a spy sorcery developed by a nameless sorcerer at the shadowy Vinheim institution. Second, he sells 2 rings for accomplished sorcerers, but wears and doesn't sell the slumbering dragon crest ring worn by the aforementioned surreptitious sorcerer at Vinheim. More than this though, I think we're supposed to question his behaviour. While he claims that he's an apprentice to Logan, Logan never once mentions the apprenticeship, and even when they're in the same shrine, they stand apart from one another. It's certainly clear that he is a passionate admirer of Logan, but it's also clear that he has some murky motivations as he shadows Logan around Lordran, still passing along information to the Vinheim school that he left. While we're in Dark Souls Remastered, did you know it's possible to visit the old Battle of Stoicism arena? Jump onto this ledge, quit out before dying, and then reload onto the fence. Take a jump at this angle, and you're there. Another thing that you probably didn't know was possible is that you can stagger Slave Knight Gale, and even open him up for a riposte. The trick is to hit his pea-sized head, whether it's with godlike accuracy with a bow, or more likely, a weapon that has a really abnormal hitbox like Onikiri and Ubadachi. Did you ever do this when you played the game? Let me know what weapon you used. And finally, number 15. The genius behind Sekiro's combat system is Masura Yamamura, its lead gameplay designer. In Bloodborne, also, there is a character called Yamamura, and he's an Eastern-styled character in Bloodborne, of all places. It makes you wonder if this, all the way back then, was an early reference to Sekiro, and a reference to the man that would become its lead gameplay designer. Dark Souls, after all, also had something like this. They had the gothic-flavoured Chester, who was pulled from another world. So it makes you wonder if he was pulled from Bloodborne, and if Dark Souls was alluding to that game all those years ago. So, maybe Sekiro has something in it that's alluding to Elden Ring. Who knows? And before I go on, guys, again, I am actually really stoked to have Audible as a sponsor, so please start your collection on me and go and visit audible.com/VatiVidya or text VatiVidya to 500. If you're watching my content, we obviously have really similar taste in media, so I'm excited to recommend you some audiobooks that I love in the coming months, and I really want to listen to yours as well, so write them in the comments and I'll give them a try with all of the Audible credits that I've accumulated. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.